I'm Elizabeth Rose. I'm an NGH certified hypnotherapist trained at the Ontario Hypnosis Centre, and today I'm here with Tariq Sattaur, who is the director of the Ontario Hypnosis Centre. And I have a bunch of questions that I'm going to ask him that will tell us what is hypnosis and what can it do for you. So the first question I have is plain and simple. What is hypnosis?
I'd like to start off by saying that hypnosis is first and foremost a tool. It's a technique that we use to help our clients move beyond that critical part of their mind and move into the subconscious part of their mind where all of their patterns are stored. And in doing so, we can help the clients affect change because once they move into that state, they become more accepting of suggestions that move them forward in a positive direction.
How can I tell when I've been hypnotized as a client?
Well, that's an interesting question because usually when you are in hypnosis or what we call a trance state, you're typically not aware that you are in a trance state until you come out of it. A good example of that is highway hypnosis. Oftentimes we may find ourselves driving along, it could be on a highway or in the city, and you suddenly realize that you've traveled a certain distance, but you don't recall seeing any of the usual landmarks or even what you did, yet you didn't get into an accident or you didn't hurt yourself or anyone. That is a trance state. You're operating on autopilot from the subconscious part of your mind, and you don't realize you're in that state until you come out of it. In a clinical setting, clients often know they're in hypnosis or in a trance state because they have certain sensations in their body. So those usually involve a tingling sensation, sometimes like pins and needles, or sometimes they feel really heavy as if they're sinking into their chair, or light as if they're floating above the chair. There are a lot of different types of subjective experiences or experiences the clients experience that indicate they are in hypnosis. There are also experiences that we as facilitators observe happening to the client that we can then tell them about, and they can probably look and observe it for themselves after they've come out of trance that show that they were indeed in a hypnotic trance.
Interesting. Okay, so what does it feel like? You've just mentioned sort of the experience. Would you say that it's a good feeling?
It's an amazing feeling. In fact, we often make a joke to our students when we're teaching the classes that they go in and out of hypnosis so often that they become what we call hypno junkies. It feels so good. You want to be there all the time. It's a very light, freeing feeling. You're really disconnected from the concerns that you may be carrying with you every day, and you're really focusing more on your inner process. And oftentimes we end our work with our clients by bringing them back with a happy feeling. So they often feel really, really amazing.
Okay, so Tariq, can anybody be hypnotized?
Well, most people can be hypnotized, but there are certain segments of the population that are not hypnotizable. Contrary to popular belief, you actually need to have a higher IQ to be hypnotized. And that the minimum IQ that we can work with someone is 70. Anyone below 70, not hypnotizable. The higher the IQ, the more hypnotizable a person is if they allow it to happen. Those people who are suffering from mental health issues, so issues such as schizophrenia or dissociative identity disorder, people who are suffering perhaps from paranoia or other types of mental health issues, we do not work with them. People who are trained in hypnosis but have the relevant qualifications may be able to do some types of hypnosis work with those clients or patients, but as a hypnotist doing clinical hypnosis for behavior change, we typically do not work with those people. So that's about, let's say, 5 to 10% of the population. The rest of the population, there is a scale. It's not distinct that this segment of the population is very hypnotizable and then that segment isn't. It's a continuum. Everyone is somewhere on that continuum, but hypnosis, like anything you learn, once you have done it a few times, you become better at it. So the more you go into hypnosis, the easier it is to go into it again, and the faster you get there.
So the client is essentially training when they're in hypnosis,
Absolutely.
Are they?
That's
Okay.
exactly what happens.
Okay, excellent. How does the hypnotist put somebody into hypnosis?
That's a great question. And so I like to say we don't put anyone into hypnosis. It's not possible. It's not possible for me, for instance, to look at you and say, sleep and you fall into a trance. And that's typically what's conveyed in the movies and the media because it sells tickets to shows and it sells, tickets at the box office. But clinical hypnosis is a voluntary process. I use a series of techniques that help you take yourself into the trance state. I cannot put you into hypnosis. I help guide you into the trance state.
Okay. I have a lot of questions, by the way, so I hope you're ready for this.
I certainly hope so.
Is hypnosis dangerous?
No, hypnosis in of itself is not dangerous at all. Like anything, what you do with it could potentially have some dangers. And in our classes, we teach that the most dangerous outcome possible is unqualified therapy. Now, we have a range of students who study with us, from people who are doctors and psychologists to the everyday layperson who may be taking the class to begin a practice of their own or just for personal interest, for personal growth and healing. And so we teach that depending on your training, on your qualifications, there's certain issues you can or cannot work with. If, for instance, you don't have training in grief counseling and you have a client coming in to see you who has just lost someone and you are not a grief counselor, hypnosis in of itself cannot help with that. That person needs to see someone who is qualified to help them deal with their grief. You can work in conjunction with a grief counselor to help that client move forward a lot faster, but without the relevant training, you are not capable of doing certain things. So the only danger is how hypnosis may be applied. In some instances, stage hypnotists do certain tricks that may potentially cause physical harm to their subjects. So for instance, there are some stage hypnotists who may put their volunteers on chairs and then stand on their body. And the client believes that they're in such a state that they're really stiff and nothing can kind of bend their body. But hypnosis doesn't give you superpowers, right? So harm can still come to the body in that way. Ethical stage practitioners will only do the types of tricks on stage that ensure that their clients are always safe.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. And to what extent is hypnosis mind control?
It is not mind control at all. So hypnosis basically takes you into that trance state where you are more susceptible to suggestions, absolutely. However, if I were to say anything to you that completely goes against your values or something that you do not agree with on any level of your being or that you feel is inconsistent with how you see yourself, you will just simply reject the suggestion, you won't hear it, or you will open your eyes. Some clients go into very, very deep states of trance where they will start to engage in a behavior. So stage hypnotists will typically use very deep states of trance, and their subjects will go into these, acts that they're asking them to do. So for instance, barking like a dog. But the moment that client becomes aware of what they're doing, and they can stop it at any time. And so I'm sure you've seen, if you've gone to a stage show, that typically they will start off with a whole slew of volunteers, and they're all volunteers. They know what they're going to do, but they've chosen to be there. So they're volunteered to be on stage. The hypnotist will take them through a series of exercises and eliminate those who aren't, the most susceptible, and keep those who are more willing to participate in what's going to happen. Those are the ones who are willing to do whatever. They're the ones who stay on stage. Even in some cases, though, I've seen shows where one of the volunteers suddenly just opens their eyes and goes, yeah, no, I don't really want to do that. And so they're escorted off the stage. So you are always in control at some level. And if anything is said to you that conflicts with your values, you can stop it at any time.
Okay, so it's not mind control.
Not at all.
Is it a truth serum?
Absolutely not. So, in our clinic, we have had calls from people who wanted, to bring their partner in to say, well, where were you last Friday night? And unfortunately, you can lie under hypnosis, or I should say fortunately, because you are in control. And so while you're in that trance state, it's very unlikely that you would want to lie because you're doing it for clinical purposes. You want to get to the root of the problem and to resolve it. But we can't make someone tell the truth. It's just not possible.
Interesting. Will the process of becoming hypnotized make me more susceptible to being controlled by others? Like, I think of being sort of weak-willed. It's not really control, but am I therefore susceptible?
Well, I would actually venture to say that the opposite happens. Because once you go into the trance state and you recognize the power of your mind to affect change in your life, So the power of your mind to stop a behavior you've been trying to stop for many years, and suddenly you tap into that subconscious part of yourself and make that change happen. Or to make yourself not feel pain. There's a process called anesthesia, a level of hypnosis where when you get into that level, you can stop yourself from feeling pain. And so if I were to pinch you, you wouldn't feel it. Once you can see that power of your mind, you know that you have this amazing capacity within yourself. And so it really empowers you. And so it makes you less susceptible to other people having control over you.
Okay, thank you. And what about afterwards? What will I remember? Will I remember anything at all?
Well, usually you remember everything that happens in the process. Think of it like going to a really good movie that really absorbs you into the story. And so while you're there, you are so drawn into what's happening on screen that you kind of lose everything else that's happening around you. That's a trance state. You know there's a director there telling people what to do, and you know those are actors on the screen, and it's a plot that they're acting. You know it's not real, yet you cry or you laugh. You become involved in the process because you have surrendered yourself. You've eliminated that critical part of your mind, and you've surrendered yourself to the process of what's happening on screen. And so you simply just react to what's happening there. In that trance state, however, you are aware of what's happening on screen. When you leave the movie, you will remember most of it, but not everything. So if a friend says, "Did you remember when this person said that?" It may take you a while to kind of recall it. It's the same thing. You remember pretty much everything that happens in the process. However, there's a stage of hypnosis, a level of hypnosis that's called the amnesic stage. And so some of my clients will report, they heard my voice up until this period, and then they lost me for a bit, and then they heard me again, and then they lost me. Yet they're still interacting with me in those periods when they were saying they weren't hearing me anymore, and they don't remember what we're saying. Eventually it will come back. I can guarantee you, if I were to say anything at all in that period when they weren't hearing me that was inconsistent with their values, they would come back, they would hear it. But usually I'm giving such good positive suggestions that they can just surrender and abandon themselves to the process and absorb those suggestions. And it helps them to feel so good that when they come back, they remember only what they need to and forget the rest that's irrelevant.
Okay, thank you. And because they can remember, they do go into a deep state, can you give them a suggestion to go rob a bank or to go empty their bank account?
Absolutely not. I mean, that's actually one of the most popular examples I give to my clients. I would sit with them and say, if I could make you do things like that, I wouldn't need to be here. I could literally tell you, go to the bank and bring all your money, and then forget that you were here. And that would happen, but it never does, right? And if you think about things like that, governments who would have these capacities to do things like that, think of, how different our world would be if it was possible to look at someone, give them a suggestion, make them do something that they don't want to do, and then forget they had even ever done it. Our world would be a very different place. That's also not possible.
Excellent. Good to know. What happens if I go into trance and then I don't wake up? I get stuck in trance.
It's actually not really possible for you to get stuck in trance. Think of it this way. Hypnosis is that state of mind between wakeful alertness, so beta consciousness, which is what we're in right now, we're engaged in a critical discussion, and sleep, where you're unaware of what's happening around you. The hypnotist's voice is what keeps the client in that state between awareness and unawareness. So think of yourself as kind of floating somewhere in between those two states. Without the voice, your clients will either fall asleep and then they'll wake up normally, or they'll open their eyes and come back to full alertness. So it's not really possible to get stuck in hypnosis or in trance. Hypnosis and meditation are pretty much the same thing, and so a lot of people meditate and you never hear of people getting stuck in meditation. So the brainwave state is exactly the same, so it's not possible to be stuck there.
Okay, thank you. And what is hypnosis good for? What can I use it for?
That's a very long list. Anything you can think of as a behavior, it can be used for. So from biting your nails, to pulling your hair, to overeating or eating unhealthily, smoking, anything that you do, you can use hypnosis to change that behavior. even patterns of emotional states. You know, you respond emotionally to certain things, and sometimes those responses aren't the best for you, and you want to change that. So I've had some clients who've come in to change how they respond because they're usually very angry in their response, and they wanted to get rid of that. And we work with helping them to change the emotional response to something a little bit more tempered. We can't get rid of anger, it's a part of you. But what we do then is we help the client to basically tap into the part of themselves that has an awareness of something, I think, a bit kinder, and bring that up to the surface, connect it with how they typically respond, change the pattern of response, and so it's just different.
Okay, interesting. So what about self-hypnosis? Is that something that I can do?
Absolutely. We like to say all hypnosis is self-hypnosis because, well, we basically guide you into that state. And we teach all of our clients self-hypnosis because they come to see us for just 1 hour, maybe 2 hours, out of their whole week or month, and it's not really possible for an hour or two to compete with the rest of your life. And so you have to maintain, it's a process, you have to maintain the suggestions by doing self-hypnosis. It's not forever, you just have to do it long enough so that it becomes permanent. And anyone can do it. Once you've come in and you've gotten hypnosis a few times and you've learned to go into the trance state, you can take yourself there anytime.
Okay, great. So you've described the difference between stage hypnosis and hypnotherapy. What about hypnosis and psychotherapy?
Very, very different. Psychotherapists have a lot of training that help them to understand the cognitive processes behind someone's behavior. It's a very, very involved training that psychotherapists go through to basically understand the human condition. Hypnosis is not counseling, it's not therapy, it's behavior change. The client comes in, this is what I'm doing now, this is what I want to do instead. We go into the subconscious mind and basically change the patterns to get them from here to here. That's it.
And how quick can that be?
It can be really, really fast. We don't like to promote this, but because not everyone can do this, but we've had clients who've smoked, for instance, for 40 years, stop with 1 session of hypnosis.
Wow.
But then we've also had clients who smoked for 5 to 10 years and they needed 7 to 10 sessions. So it varies. It can be very quick. Compared to many other modalities out there, hypnosis often has a response that can be seen as somewhat magical in nature. And it's not magic, but it's just a process that's helping you to tap into those inner reserves of your power, bringing them up to help you make those changes happen a lot faster.
Okay. And will hypnosis work for anyone?
Well, anyone who's willing to participate in the process. So we can't make you do anything you don't want to do, as I've mentioned. We've had some people whose spouses or partners have called and said, can you make my partner stop smoking? No, we can't. As long as you want to make a change, we can help. And as long as you meet certain criteria, so for instance, you don't have mental illnesses, and you can focus, then we work with you to cultivate that process that helps you to make change happen.
So, given that everything is stored in the subconscious, maybe you can comment on that. Can everything that ever happened to you be replayed like a video when you're in hypnosis?
Well, hypnosis actually helps you to improve your memory. And we've had clients who've come in because they've misplaced their keys or watch or jewelry, and they really can't remember what they did with it or what was happening at the time. And so hypnosis can help you delve into those memories of what was happening around the time you lost that article or item, and basically clarify, bringing more detail into what you are remembering. So hypnosis can help you enhance your memory. I used it for myself when I was in university to help bump up my grades because I was working way too many hours, and that's very taxing on the body and brain. And so I used hypnosis to help me focus when I was doing my studies, and also to help me remember the details a lot more quickly.
Okay, good. And is it safe for children?
It absolutely is. Now, we should qualify that depending on the age of your child, hypnosis works extremely well. At the younger ages, I think between 0 and 8 or 9 years old, kids are already in a hypnotic state. They're already in a trance-like state because of their brainwave patterns. So we typically don't really work with children who are younger than 9 years old. There is a specific training, pediatric hypnosis, that we offer for hypnotists to learn very particular protocols to help their clients who are in that age range deal with things like thumb sucking or bedwetting, even cultivating healthy patterns of behavior. But it's a very specific training because there are very specific protocols you have to work with. We tend to work with clients who are usually about 13, 14 and above.
Okay, so Tariq, we've talked about improving the memory and recalling things that were stored in the past, and also about childhood or children, working with children. So what is past life regression?
Great question. Past life regression is very different from what we call age regression, where we regress someone back into an earlier time in their life to recall some details of what was happening at that time. Those who believe in reincarnation believe that they've lived lives before this one. And past life regression is a process that we use to help our clients uncover memories of previous lifetimes. There are some schools of thought or belief that say when you come into this life, you bring with you certain memories of certain lifetimes that are then stored in the subconscious mind, which then basically play out and continue to affect you in this life. We absolutely work on that level where we regress our clients to recall those memories that are stored in their subconscious. We also have a process where we basically use it to access what we call the superconscious mind, where all of their past life memories are stored. If you find you have a particular way of being, an emotional pattern, a behavioral pattern, something you do and you just don't know why you're doing it, there's no reason for it, or you love a culture and it has absolutely nothing to do with you and where you grew up and your family, past life regression usually can shed some light on that aspect of yourself. In fact, my first experience with hypnosis, at the time I knew nothing about it, was with past life regression. I volunteered. And I went in, being kind of cocky and wanted to prove it as hokey and, some kind of new age nonsense. And I had an amazingly powerful experience, which actually connected me with a part of myself that I never really understood. It wasn't a part of my family structure. It wasn't a part of how I was brought up. It was almost as if I had this aspect of my personality from someplace completely different from everything I've experienced. And when I have the regression, it made me kind of realize where it could be coming from and actually helped me to accept and integrate that part of myself into myself a lot more seamlessly. I've done a number of regressions since then, and I've uncovered a number of different pieces of information that helped me to recognize me more clearly. Past life regression obviously requires the client to first believe in that concept. And with that belief, then we can help the clients access those memories.
Okay. So I've read a number of books by Brian Weiss and Michael Newton, and Michael Newton talks about life between lives. So perhaps you can elaborate or explain what is that?
So if you believe in reincarnation, if you believe that you've lived lifetimes before, then you should also consider the concept of the space in between those lifetimes. Let's consider your most recent past life. After you passed away in that life, you had to go to some space where your soul rested before it came into this life. There's some schools of thought that say, once you pass away, you immediately are reincarnated into another body. I absolutely believe that's possible. I've seen cases where that was the case. But there are those who believe that there's a space where the soul goes to recuperate. I think both concepts are absolutely possible. Now, if you accept the idea of the interlife, then in that space where the soul goes to rest and to recuperate, you can use hypnosis just like you would for past life regression. You can use it for life between lives types of work. You take the client into a state where they move into the subconscious mind, from the subconscious into a superconscious state of awareness, and from that they can access memories of the interlife experience, or they can even possibly have an interlife experience right now in real time where they connect with, if they believe in guides, spiritual guides or angels, they can connect with those types of entities and have an experience that is very real and very present. As an example, I've had some clients who came in specifically for the interlife experience. Now, I'm a skeptic by nature, And I encourage all of my clients to maintain their skepticism. It's healthy. And we often have sometimes families coming into these types of work. And once we had two sisters who came in. I was working with one, and my colleague, Sean Gallagher, was working with another. And I took her through the process. And as we were finishing off, she said her father was there. So I said, okay, well, let's chat with that and see what he has to say. And he had passed away about 2-3 years before. They had a conversation. He said some things to her that were really important for her, and she got a lot out of that. And then when she came back, when the conversation was finished and I brought her back, she sat and she thought, you know, I don't know if I made that up because I needed to see him so much. And I said, you know, it really doesn't matter. Whether you made it up or whether it was a real experience, the fact of the matter is you got something out of it, something that really is valuable to you and it helps you. And she said, well, that's true, so it doesn't matter. But when we came out of the room, her sister, who was working at the same time, came out and she said, was Dad here? Did you see him as well? And she did too. So it was really interesting because some of the stuff that my client experienced in here, her sister had a very similar experience with her dad saying very similar things to her as well. So being in different rooms, them not hearing each other, and having such a very powerful experience that connects on several levels in terms of the information that was given, I thought, well, any doubts that I had about whether that was real or not, I just kind of pushed it off to the side, because for me, you couldn't get more real than that.
It's true. That's an interesting story. Which brings me to, we've done past and interlife. What about future life?
Now that's very, very interesting. I've actually been working with a few of my students on that, developing a protocol for future life progression. And when I teach the past life course, I end it usually with a future life progression for the group. And you know, we've had some experiences where people have seen some very, very interesting things. Even more remarkable is that some of these experiences have a correlation with each other. Like there are very, very strong similarities between the experiences. And I just actually did one yesterday with one of my students. I'm working on the process. And she came back and she said, you know, this is so powerful. She said she found it to be even more powerful than the past life regression, because when you project yourself into the future, it's almost as if you were able to see that it continues, that there is more to you than, well, how you perceive yourself. And you get a sense of what you need to do in this life to create the kind of life that you want to have in the next few incarnations that you are going to have. And it was an overwhelming experience for her, because it really kind of cemented some of the stuff that we have uncovered in the work we did with past life and interlife work.
Sounds like the new frontier to me.
Well, we're going to find out soon enough.
Very interesting. So, what type of training does a hypnotherapist need to have before they are able to do all of these things?
Well, our school offers a lot of courses. I'm a firm believer in ongoing education. I'm learning all the time. I learn from my clients, I learn from my students. And when I teach, one of the first things I say at the beginning of every class is, I'm not here to be the authority, to tell you and to teach you everything. Yes, I have knowledge that you do not have at this time. I'm here to share that with you. But everyone has experiences that can add to the depth of the class. And I often encourage that. We bring that out in our discussions. It's an interactive process where they learn the skills and techniques of hypnosis that I have, and we combine it with, other modalities that they may be trained in, or other schools of thought that they may have. And we create a cohesive group where everyone is learning all the time. I encourage all of my students to continue to study, even if it's not with us, additional techniques, to go on and expand their horizons beyond hypnosis so that they can add to their knowledge of hypnosis. With things like past life regression, life between lives, I absolutely believe you need training for it. There are certain protocols that must be followed in order to have an ethically based session with your clients. I'm a big believer in an ethical session where you are not telling your clients what's happening. You're not, the authority on their life. They are. And you're basically just helping them to get the information to live their life more fully. So for a basic hypnosis practitioner, I would say the minimum training that I would accept is 100 hours of training, which is what we do for the National Guild of Hypnotists. That's the bottom line training that we offer. Subsequent to that, students can register for any course that basically taps into their area of interest. So for instance, we have hypnosis for sports, for childbirthing, for fertility, for pain management, you name it, there's a course for it. We have what's called the Metaphysical Hypnotist Certification Program, which involves training for past life regression, life between lives therapy, and energy work, energy release, where you take the client into the trance state and help them balance their own energies and remove any unwanted energies that may be with them. So that's a more metaphysically based process. We also have the Master Hypnotist course, which goes into kind of more advanced techniques like age regression or parts therapy. For us, we offer our certification, so you'll be certified by the Ontario Hypnosis Centre once you've completed 150 hours of training or training plus supervised practice. We are looking in a number of years to possibly increase that to 200 hours because, well, it's called a practice for a reason. You don't get to be really good at what you do unless you practice it. And I'm a firm believer in ongoing practice, ongoing study to enhance your skills so that you can be the best possible for your client.
Tariq, thank you so much for those comprehensive answers. That was very interesting. So for people that want to learn more, how would they contact you?
Well, there are several ways of contacting us. You can visit us online at www.ontariohypnosiscentre.com. You can email us from our website, or you can send us an email directly at info@ontariohypnosiscentre.com, or you can call us, telephone number 416-489-0333, or toll free 1-866-497-7469.
Excellent. So thank you so much for watching, and we look forward to hearing from you soon.